The next day, early in the morning, Jiu-Chu and his men set off towards the Tang clan. One of the elders turned around and with a smile mentioned that they would soon arrive and assumed that they would finally have to stay at the Tang clan mansion that night. A smile spread across Jiu-Chu's face. He couldn't help but feel happy as it was a relief to escape sleeping outdoors. He began to imagine the leader of the Muram Alliance, the Emperor of the Fist, Ju Young-hak, with his fist clenched and his eyes shining with rage. With a nervous expression, Jiu-Chu realized that he had to bring at least one good piece of news. He was eager to find even a small trace of the blood cult. After several minutes, they arrived at the entrance of the Tang clan, which was being guarded by 2 armed guards. The elder could not help but feel joyful upon seeing that the Tang clan mansion was in sight. The attention of one of the guards fixed on them, and his eyes widened in surprise. He assumed that they must be the guests from the Muram Alliance. Jiu-Chu stepped forward, closed his fan, and with a calm gaze introduced himself as the military advisor of the Muram Alliance. One of the guards opened the door, and the other greeted them as a sign of respect and thanked them for their valuable visit, asking them to please wait a moment. The eyes of the guard expanded with nervousness. He looked to one side and explained that there were some things they had to be aware of before entering the Tang clan mansion. Upon hearing this, Jiu-Chu's eyes widened in confusion, making him curious, while on the other hand, the elder asked if they had to surrender their weapons before entering. The guard began to touch his chin with his finger and with an embarrassed expression mentioned that this might sound embarrassing, but explained that no matter how small or insignificant a creature might seem, they should never take a life within the Tang clan. Jiu-Chu began to imagine a golden statue of a Buddha and with a surprised expression wondered if the entire Tang clan had converted to Buddhism. The guard became nervous and explained that they would find out when they entered the Tang clan, but he asked them to keep this in mind. Upon hearing this, Jiu-Chu and the leader became serious. Just then someone appeared and felt happy to see that the military advisor had arrived. Seeing this, Jiu-Chu's eyes widened in surprise, making a smile appear on his face. They were Huiyin and Soryong. Both bowed their heads before him and greeted him as a form of respect. Jiu-Chu also bowed his head to them and greeted them back, mentioning that it had been some time since he had seen Huiyin. She placed her hands over her abdomen and mentioned that it had been exactly 1 year since the last time they had seen each other. With a smile, Jiu-Chu asked where the myriad poison's divine sovereign was. Huiyin closed her eyes and replied that her grandfather had gone to search for traces of the blood cult, asking that he please forgive her for the inconvenience. Jiu-Chu's attention fixed on her, and with a serene expression, he asked how it could be an inconvenience to be received by one of the 3 flowers of Muram. His eyes widened with curiosity, and his attention fixed on Soryong. He asked who this young warrior was. With a kind smile, our boy said that it was an honor for him to meet the military advisor. He greeted them again and introduced himself as Y Soryong. Upon hearing this, Jiu-Chu and the elders' attention focused on him. They were confused to see that he was not from the Tang clan. Huiyin placed her hand over her chest, looked away, and with a nervous expression revealed that Soryong was her fiancé. This revelation left Jiu-Chu and the elder in shock. The men who had come with them started losing their minds and feeling jealous upon seeing that one of Muram's 3 flowers had a lover. They clenched their fists, and their eyes filled with tears. For them, this world was unfair, and they did not know where Soryong had come from. Envy also became evident in Jiu-Chu's eyes. He opened the fan, and while gazing at the ground, he asked if they could guide them inside. He knew that at this rate, it was possible that the whole group would request a sparring match with Soryong. Just then, a strange sound spread through the air. The eyes of Zheng-Hu and the elder filled with confusion and curiosity since they did not know where that strange sound was coming from. The men's jaws dropped. They began to look at the sky, and with a surprised expression, they caught everyone's attention, revealing that there was something in the sky. The sound came from the golden-haired king bees, which were flying around the area. Everyone's attention was fixed on them. They were in shock upon seeing that there were such poisonous creatures as these bees in the Tang clan. The men stood in front of Huiyin and the others, drew their swords, and asked everyone else to be careful. They were ready to protect Huiyin. Seeing this, Soryong couldn't help but panic and, with a serious gaze, asked them to put away their weapons. His eyes widened in fear. He placed his hand on the man's shoulder and decided to explain the new regulations of the Tang clan. But the man became angry, pushed our boy's hand away, and with a furious gaze asked him to step aside, revealing that the golden-haired king bees were very dangerous creatures capable of killing an ordinary person with ease. Soryong tried to explain himself, but little by little the men began to crush his body. He could no longer contain his rage, pushed the men away, and with a furious gaze revealed that he was raising the golden-haired king bees, asking everyone to calm down. The man couldn't help but go into shock and swallowed hard upon seeing that Soryang was raising such poisonous creatures. One of the bees landed on Soryang's head as a form of love, and upon seeing this, Jughu and the others were scared shitless and backed away. With a smile, Soryang began to play with the bees and knew that they had missed him since it had been some time since they last saw each other. Huyen's eyes widened with joy, and she began to show a smile. The gaze of the bees fixed on Jughu and his men. Our boy began to caress one of the bees and with a kind smile asked them not to sting the guests. The man's jaw dropped. He began to sweat upon seeing that Soryang was treating the golden-haired king bees as if they were children. And then, the spirits of the young warriors instantly calmed down. After this incident, Jughu and the elder accompanied Soryang and Huang inside. Jughu's attention was fixed on Soryang. He would never have thought that the young warrior from Hainan Island was the fiancé of the poisonous flower. He was in shock to see that despite being an outsider, Soryang had managed to become the son-in-law of Clan Tang. As they were strolling, something caught Jughu's attention. Not far from them, two men were sitting and arguing with each other. The black-haired man took out a small vase and, while pointing at it with his finger, with a furious gaze made it clear that a venomous scorpion would be more suitable for the Tang clan. The orange-haired boy took out a small chameleon and, with a gaze full of rage, asked what he was talking about and asked everyone to look at the shape of the chameleon's radiant crest. Jughu's eyes widened in fear. He placed his hand on Soryang's shoulder and, while sweating, asked why all those warriors were taking care of insects and animals. Soryang came out of his trance and became curious. While the men were arguing, our boy explained that they were sentenced to the venomous creature companionship punishment. Jughu started sweating and asked what they had done to deserve such punishment. Soryang put his hand under his chin and began to ponder. A few days ago, at night, the incident occurred. Soryang and Huyen went to the training hall. Our boy started training. She got nervous and explained that he had to feel as if he were expelling his internal energy. Our boy concentrated, but it seemed like he was dancing instead of training. Just then, someone appeared and caught their attention, making them curious. It was Commander Gu and his men. They all closed their eyes and became nervous. With a sad gaze, Gupi apologized, explaining that this time more than half of the rat pups captured to feed the tiger-striped water snakes had died. Upon hearing this, Soryang turned towards them and his eyes filled with sadness. Huyen was somewhat surprised as she did not know what was happening. Soryang crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and let out a sigh knowing that there was not much they could do about it since naturally rats were sensitive, and if things became too noisy, sometimes the mother would kill them. But Gupi revealed that the warriors had eaten the rats. Soryang's eyes filled with confusion. Gupi explained that they had eaten the rats as snacks while drinking alcohol. His eyes widened in shock. He was speechless upon seeing that the warriors had eaten the young ones as a side dish for alcohol. He was confused, not knowing what was happening. Huyen crossed her arms, began to observe Gupi, and explained that 3 screeches was a dish where live baby rats were dipped in sauce and eaten. Gupi could not avoid feeling embarrassed. He lowered his head again before Soryang and apologized again. Soryang was paralyzed trying to understand the situation. Huyen approached them and began scolding them. Gupi grabbed his ears and explained that some of the poison handlers were from Hainan, and they had said that it reminded them of their home, and one thing had led to another, causing this to happen. Soryang started staring at them with contempt and finally realized that the baby rats that had been captured to be used as food for the tiger-striped water snakes had been eaten by the warriors. He was furious and knew he had to do something so they would learn to value the creatures they raised. In this way, it was how the Tang clan of Sichuan established the venomous creature companionship punishment, and a new set of rules. Back in the present, Soryang crossed his arms and his gaze fixed on them, explaining that each of the warriors was now responsible for raising a venomous creature. The warriors began to argue among themselves. Jughu couldn't help but sweat, finally realizing why each one had a venomous creature. His eyes widened with curiosity and his gaze fixed on Soryang. To him, he was someone very interesting. Soryang began staring at the warriors with hatred and sighed, and Jughu finally realized that he was not an ordinary person. At nightfall, the great patriarch arrived, and the 3 sat at a table to chat. With a serious expression, the great patriarch recounted everything that had happened. Jughu closed his eyes and with a smile mentioned that Soryang must be the enigmatic young warrior whom the patriarch of the Tang clan had met on Hainan Island. The great patriarch began to observe him and with a smile asked what he thought about the treasure of the Tang clan. Jughu praised our boy, saying that calling him enigmatic did not do him justice, admitting that the golden-haired king bees were astonishing. Soryong could not help but feel nervous upon seeing that he was being praised. Jugho's eyes began to shine with seriousness. For him, it was worrisome not to have found a single clue about the blood cult. With a smile, the great patriarch turned to Soryong and made it clear that they could not sit idly by and allow the influence of the blood cult to continue growing. Soryong's eyes widened with curiosity, and he turned toward him. The great patriarch asked our boy to bring that. This made Jugho's eyes widen in confusion and curiosity. The great patriarch began to show a finger and, using his power, created a barrier around them. Then, he closed his eyes and with a smile explained that they could not risk any sound leaking out, so for this reason, he had invoked a Kai barrier. Our boy put his hand inside his clothes, and Jugho began to observe the barrier, and his jaw dropped. With a confident smile, Soryong took out a small jar and placed it on the table. Jugho grabbed the jar, began to observe it, and his mind filled with questions. He asked what kind of object required even a Kai barrier to maintain secrecy. With a confident gaze, the great patriarch replied that it was a poison that dissipated internal energy. Jugho argued that the internal energy dissipating poison was quite common and hardly seemed like something that required a Kai barrier. Soryong and the great patriarch looked at each other and nodded with a smile. He revealed that this particular poison, which could dissipate internal energy, only affected members of the blood cult. Jugho's attention fixed on the poison, and his eyes widened in surprise. He panicked, slammed his hand against the table, and asked if this was true. The great patriarch closed his eyes and, with a confident expression, explained that although it was hard to believe, it was true. With a gaze full of hatred, Jugho began to imagine the members of the blood cult, thinking that this was a truly incredible discovery, revealing that the reason they had fought so hard during the blood cult rebellion 30 years ago had been because they had used internal energy dissipating poison against them. The great patriarch began to recall the blood cult rebellion and confirmed Jugho's suspicions by explaining that when martial artists like them were poisoned, their internal energy dispersed, leaving them powerless, but the members of the blood cult remained completely intact. With a serious gaze, Jugho asked what the potency of this version of the poison was. The great patriarch's eyes began to shine with confidence and he responded that according to Huan, the poison was capable of reducing their physical abilities to the level of an ordinary person, revealing that she had defeated a blood cult elder who had been poisoned with a single blow. Upon hearing this, a smile appeared on Jugho's face and his eyes began to shine with joy, realizing that this had the same effect as the internal energy dissipating poison from the past. He greeted the great patriarch as a form of respect and thanked him since with a gift like this, even the leader of the alliance could breathe more easily. He turned to Soryong and mentioned that if Jugho wished to express gratitude, he should direct it to Soryong since he was the one who had made this discovery. He explained that Soryong had poisoned himself with the poison to lure the elder of the blood cult into absorbing his blood, and because of this, he had been on the brink of life and death for about 10 days. Jugho's eyes widened with admiration, thinking that he had great wisdom and bravery, sacrificing his own body. Our boy began to touch his neck and couldn't help but turn red. Jugho placed his hand on Soryong's shoulder, causing a confused smile to appear on his face. With a grateful gaze, Jugho said that if Soryong had any wish, he could ask him for it. Whatever it was, he would personally tell the leader of the alliance. Jugho started to smile. Waiting for an answer, our boy lowered his head and began to ponder. He started to touch his chin and with a nervous gaze, asked if it would be possible to obtain information about toxic creatures. Jugho was confused to see that Soryong was interested in information about toxic creatures and not in martial manuals, elixirs, treasures of gold and silver. His eyes filled with confusion, and he couldn't help but sweat. Seeing this, the great patriarch began to laugh. Jugho closed his eyes and realized that Soryong was unique since, even in Muram's long history, this was the first time he had seen such an eccentric person. He opened his eyes and, with a smile, explained that it might not be exactly the toxic creature he was looking for. He asked if our boy was interested in a mystical stone lizard. So, friends, this chapter comes to an end. What will happen next? We'll uncover it in the next chapter. Don't forget to rate this chapter out of 10 in the comments. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.